What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction and a ridiculous Luca. She was doing like a full body stretch as I just stepped over her. Yes, I'm talking about you. And we're back with another Pet Shop Wednesday. I wanted to thank all those who've been following this deep dive for a couple of years now, as well as to Seb and I'm trying to remember who else provided PSB. I know Seb has been the main provider, but I do think maybe Izzy and some others have provided like individual tunes. Nevertheless, we are continuing through Relentless. I'm going to circle back for Forever in Love, which people mentioned that the version on this, what's the right, I mean, I guess it's an album, like not like a regular studio album. Nevertheless, I will circle back because people mentioned that the version I already reacted to as one of the bonus tunes in that expanded folder for Very is different from the one on Relentless, but I figure we'll go through the rest of the tracks first and then I'll go back and hit that one before we move on to the next chapter. So the next track is that We Came From Outer Space. Do I have this right? Yes, We Came From Outer Space, which very much sounds like one of those late 50s, early 60s sci-fi movies with, a bit over-the-top acting and references to radar and lunar colonies, and where it's all a bit silly but also certainly at the time reflective of the way technology was changing the understanding and the technological abilities of humankind and suggesting that we might one day colonize the moon and so on. So yeah, it feels like the title of one of those throwback movies. I wonder if there is something to that, whether it's like referencing a film like that in the song, or whether the sonics might have a bit of a alien sound to them, or rocket ships and so on. Of course, it could be outer space, meaning people who are very bizarre, unusual. We come from outer space, and thus, we're just so different from people, and we're seen as alien. I feel like there's a way that I could interpret it more terrestrially. So I'll try to catch what I can. This is Pet Shop Boys. The track is We Came From Outer Space, and it's included on their 1993 album Relentless. Waiting for that kick drum. Sinusoidal acid line. With some synth rain over the top. Another one I like a great deal, and right off the bat, it definitely did sound a bit alien, a bit sci-fi, maybe not quite as throwback as I was thinking, but it did have a bit of an extraterrestrial quality. And again, as someone who has a fair amount of experience in like 90s rave styles, I'll say a couple things. Like, one, the breakbeat percussive rhythm and some of the sonics made me think this could work in like a psy-break set, like a psychedelic break trance set that you'd hear out in the desert, out at a forest party somewhere. Then some of the other synth lines sounded like early 90s trance, especially that like vocal synth that was in part of the track that's like very early to mid 90s trance, and that like synth rain, as I think I called it, again very 90s trance, maybe a bit more like mid 90s, so 93, perhaps a bit presaging, a bit ahead of its time, so to speak. I'll say also that lovely, if relatively simple and low-key acid line, just kind of weaving up and down a little bit. That's always going to be enjoyable to my ears anytime I hear a bit of acid, which is certainly not the first time I've said that about a Pet Shop Boys tune. They're definitely a more mainstream group that utilized the 303 at a time when it was certainly becoming the thing that it is known. I mean, obviously acid house goes back to the mid 80s, but yes, like acid trance and acid in other 90s rave styles is, of course, again, the circles that I traffic in, and hearing it in their dance floor tunes tells me, again, like maybe especially Chris, but just both of them were conversant in that world and bringing it, maybe cleaning it up a little and bringing it to the world of, dance floor, like synth pop, synth dance. So yes, a really compelling arrangement of electronic sounds. And in fact, that vocal, that sort of ethereal, like quasi-tribal type vocal, I don't know if that was a female voice, but that reminded me of the Platypus label, which is a trance label that was especially prominent in the like mid to second half of the 90s. I think run by Simon Barry, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, that really sounded like a Platypus trance, like Calling Your Name, like, what is it, Libra Presents Taylor. That was maybe the most famous tune from the Platypus label, but it felt like a tune in that sort of vein. So again, lots of different trance flavors for me hearing this. And again, I don't think there were any like proper lyrics. I think there were some like spoken vocal samples, like certainly a male one, and then in the beginning in that like sci-fi section, I think there was like a female one, but I couldn't quite make out what any of them were, so definitely one I'll have to re-listen to. And again, just the overall composition of this, a bit ethereal, but like, as I said during the track, it's the kind of track with that breakbeat where I could see people, whether in the forest or out in the desert, like pop locking and, sort of dancing in a 90s raver style. So, yes, one like that I'm very sympathetic to because it reminds me of a lot of the music that I was hearing at parties I was going to, which again is a little bit later than 93. I went to my first party in 96, but yeah, it reminds me of a lot of 90s styles, but in a way, like, still very much Pet Shop Boys. So, yes, I'm loving this journey through some of their more, let's say, dance floor or electronic sounds. As I said, I will circle back for this other version of Forever in Love, but I figure we'll go to the end of the album before I do that. Once again, major thank you to Seb, as well as to all the others who've been commenting and those who showed a lot of enthusiasm for making this a more regular thing, which I was never really opposed to, but as people know, I go through a lot of different deep dives, and on some level, I'm just trying to make sure I'm hitting all the deep dives, including those that come semi-regularly, those that come more rarely, and those that are more frequent or like, weekly. So yes, again, I'm very happy to do this Pet Shop Boys, weekly Wednesday journey, and I appreciate that there was a lot of immediate, support for it and enthusiasm for it. So in any case, let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.